Welcome back. Recently, police have warned motorists not to stop along the N1 near the Doorns to buy grapes. They have found that many of these grapes are stolen produce. Crime in the agricultural sector is being driven not only by joblessness and abject poverty, but more and more often also by organized crime syndicates. It's incredibly difficult to quantify the theft of things like livestock, maize and fruit. But the impact on farmers is devastating. In some cases, farmers have woken to find an entire crop wiped out in the night by thieves. Here to tell us more is Jannie Strydom, CEO of Agri Western Cape. Mr. Strydom, thank you so much for your time this evening. And while we're commenting here on a specific recent incident, which I'm sure you have seen the news report of, but it's a much bigger picture. So when South Africans buy, especially from informal sellers, perhaps on the side of the road or at an informal market, they think they're doing a good thing in the spirit of Ubuntu by supporting an informal trader who's desperately trying to eke out a living. But when it's stolen produce they buy, they're unwittingly aiding and abetting criminals. But how do you know the difference between stolen produce or stolen livestock and that which is legitimately being sold by an informal setter? How do the police even know?
Yeah, good afternoon, Anle, and to the viewers as well. No, you're absolutely right. It's a very difficult situation we found ourselves in. But I think there's a couple of obvious things that the consumers should consider. Firstly, there's a SANRAL and National Roads Act, Act 7 of 1998, that prohibits anybody to sell on national roads. So I think once a consumer at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the night or the early mornings find a single person along a national road selling fruit in a dodgy packaging, I think, you should use your own discretion in terms of whether that's legitimate or not. I think it's really difficult to determine because the informal market is a very crucial and important market in our economy. But those vendors, they do obtain permits, and they are allowed to trade. But I think what recently happened in the Doorns, and I mean, I experienced it myself, nearly running somebody over 3 years ago because at night just jumping in front of your car trying to sell grapes. It's really difficult, but I would really like to emphasize the fact that consumers do not support these vendors, because once there's no market, then that will definitely assist with limiting the theft on farm level itself.
The situation related to stolen grapes in the Doorns, that's just a small part of the bigger picture of fruit and crop theft in the Western Cape. What are the stats telling us about the rates at which these thefts occur and the kinds of crime, whether it's petty opportunistic crime or whether there are indeed organized crime syndicates involved?
Yeah, stats is a bit difficult to obtain. We do find from the South African Police Services some stats, but it's combined figures. But recent studies indicated, for example, on a national level for livestock theft, only 30% has been reported. So it's well underreported. So it's much a huger problem than what we think and find in the media. Unverified figures, but discussions that we had with producers in the Paarl area close by indicates that between 40,000 and 600,000 rand per season is this theft costing them. So it's really substantial given the fact that all the challenges that farmers are currently experiencing in terms of production cost and so forth. So unfortunately not definite statistics, but it's substantial if you take into consideration the bigger picture, and it's not only with produce, but it's also with infrastructure that's been damaged and stolen, copper theft and so forth. That's costing farmers a huge amount per year.
With these huge costs, it's not just the cost of the stolen fruit or crop or livestock, but it's also the costs in line with that. They need to perhaps upgrade security, as you say, damaged infrastructure. So can you tell us a little bit about the broader impact on a farmer's ability to run their business sustainably? What does it mean? And what kinds of situations have you come across in your dealings daily with farmers in the Western Cape?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, farmers, rural safety is a critical factor these days, and with no support from government, so they have to implement their own security and upgrade it themselves. So that's just additional capital layout that they need to implement in their business, and that comes from the bottom line. So it's a real challenge for farmers, but if they don't do it, then they won't survive. So yeah, we find that farmers do protect their own property, but to such an extent that that's humanly possible. We find with this load shedding, it's a substantial risk on rural safety. We think about cold chain and all of that and irrigation, but I think we tend to forget that it's a real safety issue as well. We saw in I think it was in Nelspruit region where that farmer was murdered that night when he went out to adjust his irrigation because of load shedding. So yeah, it's a substantial challenge and risk and cost. Like I said, there's no subsidies for that, and farmers need to pay that out of the bottom line, and well, it reduces the bottom line of the business at the end of the day, and that the ripple effect of that is just that there's less amount to reinvest in the business. So,
and of course, it's not only large commercial farmers that are targeted, sorry, Jannie, but it's also emerging farmers, people who are trying to build a business from the bottom up, and something like that, you know, waking to their entire harvest or crop or orchard wiped out could destroy the business.
Well, that's the great concern. I think, not to generalize, but I think the commercial farmers are more able to adjust and try to improve their own security. But your new emerging farmers, they're really exposed, and they cannot accommodate these costs. And yeah, like I said, then they are really soft targets, and for them to grow into proper commercial farmers, it just makes it more difficult. So definitely not an ideal situation we found ourselves in.
Looking at the broader picture, we've also seen a lot of difficulty in the agricultural export industry, specifically for fruit coming from the Western Cape in the last season, where a lot of farmers were unable to export fruit for various reasons, one of them being the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. I can only imagine that if you have a contract to fulfill, that you've worked incredibly hard to get and to win the trust of foreign buyers, and now you're unable to deliver because of mass theft overnight. What kind of picture does that paint for foreign buyers of how stable and trustworthy the South African market is?
Yeah, only I think one thing that we really need to understand is that once you've obtained a shelf space in foreign countries, you need to maintain the supply of quality produce. And once you lose that shelf space, you battle to get it back. So you're absolutely right. It's a huge challenge, not only with infrastructure, the ports and so forth, and the Ukraine situation you referred to, but if your production side has been hampered by theft and you cannot supply what you've been contracted for, I mean that's just absolutely not an ideal situation to be in. You're going to be challenged with serious challenges the next season to obtain those same contracts, and your exporters will just seek different suppliers. So it's a great concern, and we need a collective approach in addressing this issue and minimize it. But like I said in the beginning, I think, once there's no market, then that will definitely limit the theft. So I do plea with the consumers, please do not support those illegal sellers or vendors along the national roads.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. That was Agri Western Cape CEO Jannie Strydom. So one avenue open to consumers, if you are wondering whether the produce being sold is legal or not, you can ask for the trader's permit. Also, another red flag is if someone is selling, for instance, avocados, but avocados are not available in the shops yet, then that's very likely that those avocados have been stolen before the harvest has officially taken place. Also, keep a lookout for export-grade fruit that is being sold by informal traders. That's a clear signal that that is stolen produce.